Hello, hello. Hey, everybody. How's it going? Happy Tuesday or Wednesday, wherever you are in the world. Really looking forward to our onboarding webinar. Where's everyone dialing in and tuning in from? Hello, hello. Nigeria, nice. Wow. Nice to meet you, Dennis. Cool. We'll give folks a few more minutes to join us while we get things settled here. I'm really looking forward to today's session. We're going to be going over just the basic onboarding, a little bit about Julius, some of the capabilities, some commonly asked questions, and some best practices too for letting you guys get started using Julius. Whether this is your first time using Julius or whether you're a veteran user just looking for a refresher on some of the basics, we'll cover those all today. Before we get started, quick shout out. Again, we're still celebrating our 2-year birthday. As mentioned in our webinar last week. Again, Julius turned 2 years old. We're super thankful for all of the users around the world who made this happen. If you haven't already, let me pull up the tweet. Let me share this here. If I share my screen here, and I'll choose, let me fix this window here to the Chrome. Here, we're doing a giveaway right now for our second birthday. So you guys can submit a visualization on using Julius. If you guys have created a visualization or a chart, you could use that. Sorry, here, let me get my Chrome up. Google Chrome on X, here we go. 2-year birthday sweepstakes. Again, you guys can submit a visualization that you've created in Julius, and hopefully by the end of today's session, you'll be able to do that. Go ahead and tag us at Julius AI and use the hashtag Julius B-Day Sweeps. We're giving out swag, and we gave out quite a bit of swag last week as well. So again, just post out some of the work that you're doing, whether it's real work that you're doing for one of your use cases, or if it's just synthetic data too. It's been really cool to see the different ways that people are using Julius. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to go over basically what is Julius. Again, if you haven't created an account, we'll walk through what the basic onboarding looks like, and then we'll go through all of the different tools at your disposal to get started. Let me go back here. If you guys haven't created an account already, you can just go to julius.ai. And you could, over here in the top right on my screen, you'll see I'm logged in, but you'll see a login or sign up button, and you could use that to either sign in using Google, Apple, or your email address. And again, creating an account is free. You can get 15 free messages. This resets every month, so this is coming up next week. Everyone's resets will happen. And you get 15 free messages with Julius and some of the functionality that we'll talk about today. Before we get started, I forgot to introduce myself. My name's Tyler. Really nice to meet y'all. I'm here based in San Francisco, California, here at the Julius headquarters. You can see the Julius logo and bus behind me. And we've been doing these onboarding and webinar series starting last month, right, or earlier this month. Really great feedback so far. Really hoping to make sure you guys understand, some of the different tools at your disposal and sort of help you guys ease into Julius if you haven't already. If that makes sense. So really excited to get started. That being said, this is the overall login screen, right? This is, after you log in, this is what you'll see. This is the overall interface, and this is the Threads feature, right? So 2 main features that we see in Julius. Threads is one of them, and the other being notebooks, which we'll talk about later. We did a whole deep dive series last week on notebooks, so you'll see that in our YouTube channel as well. But in today's one, we'll just cover some of the basic functionality, mostly in Threads, and touch a little bit on notebooks. So what is Julius? Well, Julius is your AI data analyst, right? And what does that mean? Well, you could add in any files that you have. You could connect to data sources, whether it's in a data warehouse or whether it's in your Google Drive or OneDrive. And you could run any sort of analysis that a data analyst would do, right? So from data structuring and cleaning to basic exploratory data analysis to even more advanced things like visualization creating and graphs, charts, and even building machine learning models too. The use cases are endless, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about those today. But this is the overall UI. The key thing to know here is that everyone's account, whether you're a free user or a pro user or a plus user or a Teams user, all of your guys' accounts come with what we call a sandbox or a resource monitor here. And this is dedicated RAM and CPU, which will allow Julius to run everything it needs to do in order to do all of those analysis and visualizations that we talked about before. So here is all the dedicated RAM, and anytime that we do any analysis inside of Julius, you'll see we're running it inside of this container using these dedicated resources. Over here on the left side are all of the navigation tools at your disposal. You could open and close this using the arrows if needed, or you could hover over the left side to expand it temporarily. And then over here we have several key things. New is if you want to start a new thread or notebook. Alternatively, you have down here some different areas so you can go into the threads that you've created already, some notebooks that you've created already, any files that you've uploaded to Julius or that Julius has created for you previously, data connectors, which we'll talk about later, and then your inbox, which is basically a notification hub for either releases from the Julius team, updates about our status, or even things from your current teammates, right? If they're sharing notebooks, you'll see those all visible here. Finally, we do have some resources here, which we'll talk about later, but these are some that help you after this webinar. If you have questions or if you're looking for any resources, you could check out these as well, and we'll talk a little bit about those. Cool. Let's just go ahead and get started. Right now, I'm going to click here, and I'm going to select some of my files that I have here. This is one way that you can get started. The other way that you could do this is by clicking Upload File. And I'm going to choose one of the files that I have here. Really basic way that you can get started is just by directly uploading a file. In this case, let's use one from my user subscriptions, right? We'll do this one as an example. Right away, when you click the file that you want to upload, Julius is already going to start analyzing it, right? You'll see a preview of that file as if you were going to open it inside of Excel or Google Sheets. You'll see some exploratory ways that Julius has thought, like, hey, I took a preview of this data. How can we analyze this in a meaningful way? And then you'll even see over here on the right side some reasoning and some clarification and notes that Julius is putting together. Right? This right side panel, pretty useful. You sort of tend to have this open at all times. Whenever I'm doing any analysis, this one here will summarize the file and what Julius has seen about your file. We have one called Data Explorer, which we'll talk about as we continue to do our analysis. And then reasoning and outline as well. So this will be basically your way to track what Julius is doing and see what's going on underneath the hood for any analysis that Julius is doing with you. Over here on the bottom is how we're going to interact with Julius. This is our chat bar, right? Very similar to any other sort of LLM or tooling that you've used. And here we have some other tools as well at our disposal. First one is the models, right? This is a really common question. Is like, hey, how can you choose the different models that power Julius? By default, everybody has access to the default model. That's why it's named default. And this is a selection of both OpenAI's models and Anthropic's models. We choose which one to use based off of the use case that you're doing, right? Again, some models might perform better for doing analysis, while others might do better in performing like visualizations, right? If you're not sure, we just released a video earlier this week where we talked through some of the different models and capabilities and even showed side by side what some of the visualizations look like. You could also expand to more, and there's some other models at your disposal here too. Engineering team is always looking to add models as they're released. So yeah, using Julius, you'll be able to have access to the latest and greatest when it comes to any of the models, primarily from OpenAI and Claude, or OpenAI and Anthropic. Here in the tools section, you'll see some other things, and we'll dive into this a little bit more, but these are ways that you could, update or theme your charts and visualizations that Julius creates. You could save prompts, and advanced reasoning and extended memory we'll talk about as we go along. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and just say, show me subscriptions over time. Again, this is my subscriptions test data set. I'm going to press enter. And Julius is going to think about how it's going to fulfill my prompt, right? Here it says, I'll help you analyze the subscriptions over time using your file. Now it's going to generate some Python code, and it's going to run it and execute it inside of this container in our environment in our sandbox. Right? Again, I'm not typing any of this Python. I myself really don't know how to read Python, believe it or not, but we'll let Julius handle it all. I mentioned the Data Explorer earlier. I'm going to go ahead and click this over here on the right side. And you can even click and drag to expand this even further to show a little bit more of the side panel as you're working with Julius. These are data frames. It's a fancy word for saying the data underlying either the analysis, or as Julius is transforming the data, previewing the data, averaging data, removing columns. All of that will be done in what we call data frames here. And you could see each one of these, and you could even expand these to see them here in the right side panel. All of these data frames you could expand full screen, or you could even download them if you wanted to take the analysis and use it in your own software, whether it's Excel or Google Sheets. Cool, so we have Julius here. I asked it to visualize our subscriptions over time. You could see it preview the data first, then it started gathering the subscriptions by month. And then it even visualized them here. It even started doing some key insights, which was taking a look at our total subscriptions, active subscriptions, canceled subscriptions, and even showing some metrics too. That would be kind of interesting for us to further analyze or dive into. A couple of things here before we move on is there's several ways that you could share some of these visualizations as Julius is creating them. Easiest way, just copy and paste it, right? You can also use the share button. And what this will do is it'll make a link for anyone to take a look at the visualization that you created in Julius, right? So if I take this link and I pop it into my browser here, you'll see that exact chart here, right? Very handy if you're going to share them in the workspace or in Slack, for example, or even Teams. The other cool way is to download them as well, and it'll download a high resolution version of the chart that you can upload or use wherever you wish. The other cool features that we've released recently is our ability to export directly into things like Google Drive, for example. That's an example of one of our data connectors that the team has recently built out. And what this means is you could even click on Export to Drive on Google Sheet. I'm not logged in on this account, but it'll essentially open up a Google Sheet for you to use and to explore either the visualization or the underlying data in Google Sheets, right? Without needing to export it, download it, and re-upload it back in whatever software that you're using. The other cool thing you could do is also export directly to Drive, right? So if you do a CSV, it's literally just going to make it inside of your Drive instead of you needing to download and re-upload the file. Let's say I wanted to dive a little bit deeper here. Let's say, can you show me ways that can you show me insights about cancellations? Any trends that we can address or strategies we should adapt? And you can do both things, right? You could be very vague about the analysis that you're doing, keep it very high level and very exploratory, or you could be very precise and very specific about what you're doing, right? All of these LLM models have pretty much read every single data analysis and business textbook out there, constantly learning from all the training that these companies have been doing. So if you do have either a vague question, you're doing more exploratory analysis, or if you're trying to do something very specific, Julius can adapt to do both. Key thing to call out what Julius is thinking here. Several languages, most users, I would say about 98% of users use Python, but if you are familiar with R or Lean Python, you could also switch the outputs of Julius in what it's writing here to match those. And then the other cool thing here is as Julius is creating any of these visualizations, you could either click them to open it up in the side panel here, so you can see a more distinct breakdown of cancellations. And even the same thing as the text. You could click those to see these direct insights all within Julius. At any point, if you are, whether you are technical and you do know how to read and write Python, or if you really don't know how to read or write Python and you just paste it into like ChatGPT or into Claude, for example, you could always edit the code directly inside of Julius too. If, for example, you wanted to adjust one of these categories to be not less than or equal to 30 days, you could always adjust it as needed, right, for example. The other cool thing you could also do, and we'll dive into this a little bit further, is running exact code that you have on hand, or maybe from a previous Julius, previous code that Julius had generated. You could all run that inside of Julius as well, and we'll talk through how to do that. So here we have Julius output some of those recommendations, some of the ways that we could address cancellations, strategies around seasons, and things like that. The other cool thing that you could do is if you click in the top bar here, several other tools at your disposal, and these are the ones that I mentioned earlier, in addition to the ones I mentioned earlier. Right? Advanced reasoning, you could think of this as a way for Julius to really break down complex prompts, right? If I had asked it, 10 sentences all about like, hey, this is what I'm trying to do, and it's really complex and it's not able to do it just in one step, what advanced reasoning will do is it's going to get an overview of the overall goal, and then it's going to break it down into meaningful steps, and then it'll execute those and debug anything that happens as it goes along. And we'll do a demo of that one too. And the other cool one is extended memory, right? Sometimes you're working in chats across multiple days, or sometimes you might need to take a break, or maybe you're working in the same thread across multiple weeks, right? A lot of times your data analysis isn't really limited to just one day. Extended memory will use another model to summarize and keep context with you throughout all of your analysis that you're doing. You could think of it sort of like a backpack of context, right? Maybe it knows something about the business that you're working on, or maybe it knows a little bit about your use case in research, right? All of those will be kept inside of this sort of backpack of extended memory that Julius will be able to reference. The technical term for this is the context window, right? So we're extending the amount of context that Julius has beyond just this thread or just today. So very handy if you're doing work across multiple days. Cool. What we see down here are some suggestions, right? This sort of disappeared last time because I clicked out of Julius and went back. But whenever you do run a new prompt with Julius, after it's done executing it, it's going to think through some different ways that you could explore, right, the data. Again, some of this data exploration isn't really well-defined, or maybe you don't really have an end goal. If you're just uploading a spreadsheet that has data that you've never even seen before, Julius will recommend some ways that you could explore even further to get some more insights, or to think of different ways that you could either visualize or summarize. Let's go ahead and click one of these. Let's try identify key features linked to cancellations. And what I'm actually going to do now is change the model over just to give you guys a demo. I'm going to change over to O3, and then I'm going to go ahead and click the first one. And you'll see a little bit different output. And you'll see things like the way that the model will format things. You'll see maybe some errors because we're switching between models. We'll take a look at what happens. All right, so Julius is running this code here now. Quick call out to the chat here. Anyone have any preference of models that they've been using with Julius, or just in general? Do you guys use OpenAI? Do you guys use Anthropic? Do you guys use Grok, for example? I'd be curious to know what models you guys have had success with. Again, we work pretty quickly on adding in new models as they arise, but be curious to know like how folks have been using these models in their day-to-day work. All right, so here we see Julius outputting some of the things here. It's exploring the analysis, the data set, I mean. And you'll see a slightly different way of visualizing things. I think that's something that we do see between some of these OpenAI models versus some of the Anthropic models. Pretty interesting to see. RStudio, interesting. Okay, right on, right on. Cool. So here's the ones that were generated. I'm going to assume that this was done by Claude, very similar color schemes here. And then here we see the one from OpenAI. The one cool thing, let's try this out, is I'll show you some of these different chart themes, right? So we have the default Julius one. We have one for scientific publications, very similarly themed. What these all do, and if I click on theme settings here and go to create a new theme, you could essentially customize the way that these visualizations look, whether it's the colors, or even things like the watermarks, axis lines, spines, even things like the fonts and border styles. You could be as specific or as unspecific as you want in order to get the visualization that you're looking for. Really common use case is if you're working at an enterprise and you have a specific color palette theme that you use for both internal and external slide decks, you could add those colors in here. Same thing for universities and research teams, right? If you guys do have a specific color scheme, whether you need something to be super legible or very accessible, you could do all of those changes here. title it, save it, and then use that theme throughout all of Julius. The other really cool one, and we'll demo this one right now, is the interactive charts. This is one that's in beta. Really common ask from folks is if there's a way to make interactive charts similar to these other visualization tools that you've seen in the past, whether it's Looker, Tableau, any other, what other ones are there out there? And if, for example, I said, let's create a chart showing cancellations over time. I've selected the interactive chart. This will add in some more of those features for the interactiveness that you might see in some of those visualization tools. Another common question that we get from folks is if we're going to support the ability to schedule runs, right? Say there's an analysis that you've nailed down. You understand this is the way that you want to visualize things, and you want to update maybe a dashboard or update an email or just have a status report to share in a meeting maybe every day or every week, right? Really common question, and it is on our short-term roadmap. We're actually making progress on that right now. I would say interactive charts get you a portion of the way there with some of the different ways that you could visualize the data. But we're still chugging away at making some more scheduled notebooks, scheduled runs, processing those, and then populating, whether it's a dashboard or sending out an executive email too. I believe we do have a wait list as well. If you guys are looking for dashboards in particular, we'll go ahead and share that after the call too. All right, let's take a look at this HTML interactive chart, right? You'll notice nothing printed here, right? Most interactive charts won't display directly in the same analysis pane that Julius is doing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click the HTML here, and you'll see a monthly cancellations trend. And as I hover over these, you'll see the same sort of interactivity and seeing the values change, for example, etc. I've seen this work pretty well for things like pie charts or ones where there's like multiple values that you want to check, and it's not easy to read just from the y-axis labels, or even if there were, data points on this chart, it's a little bit tricky to read, but this adds in that little bit of functionality that you can share too. Common way that you do it, and you can also zoom out, and you can even select specific ranges too. So give it a try. Again, this is something that's in beta, but it does help anecdotally using Anthropic. So I would try Claude 4 next time, but give it a try and let us know how you like it. Last few things before we touch on notebooks a little bit. If you click on the three dots in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see some other ways that you could use or share Julius analysis right when you're done. First way is to download. And one of the coolest ways that you could change any sort of analysis you've done into something more reproducible or reusable is by downloading it as a Jupyter notebook, right? If I click this, it'll download as this .ipynb file. And the reason why I'm showing you this is something that I could take and plug into notebooks in the next step. If you're a data analyst, or if you're doing your own sort of work outside of Julius, whether it's inside something like Google Colab, or if you're doing it in your own Jupyter notebook, you could also take any of that analysis, plug it into Julius, and vice versa. You could take any analysis out of Julius and plug it back into your notebook, so you could save the analysis wherever you go. The other cool way that you could do this, for example, is if you want to generate an analysis report, right? Doing the analysis and in the weeds exploration of data and visualizations is great, but sometimes you want something to share with either your manager, or maybe with an executive at your company, or even if you're publishing a report that you want to share online, right? This essentially redacts away all of the different code that Julius had written and all of the different prompts that you use to prompt Julius, and takes away all of the action items and insights, as well as any specific visualizations if we had them in here as well. And the really cool thing you could do is just download as a PDF, and it's a little bit prettier for you to share versus just sharing an overall link to your thread where it's a little bit more far removed from out of the weeds. Cool. We'll go ahead and go over to notebooks now. Again, we did a whole webinar last week on notebooks, and we'll do another one next week on notebooks, talking about specific use cases and a little bit more about the functionality. But notebooks is a collection of building blocks, is the way I like to describe it. Which is essentially a series of prompts that you could run and different types of cells that you could run, which makes up your analysis, right? Key parts that are different from the threads feature, which we were talking about, is it's a lot easier to go forwards and backwards in your analysis. Say, for example, I realized I went off track and I wanted Julius to go in a different direction. Doing that in a thread is a little bit tricky because you're working linearly versus just being able to add in a new prompt before or like earlier in the conversation, right? Same exact UI here. You could add in any files or connect to any data. Or what I was showing before, you could even import a Jupyter notebook that we had downloaded, for example, and you could add that here as well. Multiple different file cells. I'll show you one example here. So we'll go back to the user subscriptions that I just used, and I'll just show you a brief overview of, we'll just click one of these ones. I clicked it on accident, but we'll analyze the subscription trends over time. And again, you'll see it's very similar UI for running the prompt and executing it, and then generating any data explorers or data frames here in the side panel. A couple other cool callouts for notebooks while this is running is that notebooks are easy to share, right? You could think of notebooks as a collaborative environment, which means if you have other teammates or if you have colleagues or other folks that are on your team, for example, if you are doing a research project, or maybe they're on a separate team, maybe you work in marketing and you need someone's input from either the data science team or maybe even from sales, you could share the notebook with them and they could run the notebook and see the outputs and everything that you're writing in real time, right? And you could see their outputs and everything they're writing in real time, all within the same environment. Very similar to like a Google Doc or Figma or Canva. That's one of the good features there. And the other really cool thing about notebooks, again, we're not going to dive too deep today, but the other cool thing is you could rerun notebooks, right? So if you do have a solid analysis that you've done, and the only thing you want to change is the data that's going into it, you don't need to recreate all the different prompts. You could just reuse a notebook over time and just copy it, duplicate it, and do different runs of it as the data changes. But more on that next week. Taking a bit of time here. You'll see this happens from time to time. Julius will run into errors. This can be because, again, these models are determining, the best way to handle my prompt. Cool thing about it, Julius will analyze the error itself and then rerun the analysis by adjusting to fix the error and avoid it, right? And that's the other cool thing about notebooks is it's a little bit easier to rerun specific prompts if you are running into issues or errors versus inside of a thread is a little bit more tricky. You have to edit the prompt and then rerun it too. So I've had a lot more success rerunning prompts inside of notebooks, for example. But if you guys aren't familiar with notebooks, I would say just give it a try. And again, join us next week or check out some of the other videos from a previous webinar where we talked about this a little bit more in depth. Cool. We'll let this run. While this is going, the other cool things I'll call out here that I mentioned before is that you could explore all of the notebooks that either people in the community have made or even people on the Julius team have made for specific use cases, right? If, for example, you needed a workflow to clean your data set or filter things, you could use one of these ones here inside of our Explore Notebooks page. A lot of pre-built notebooks for you to use. If you're curious about specific functionality, we're always updating our documentation here. Here we have several resources for you, whether you have questions about account and billing, or if you have specific questions related to notebooks, you'll see some of the recent and related videos, as well as all the different definitions and things like that inside of our sidebar here on the side. So all the different cells that you have at your disposal. The last few things and resources that we have are if I go back to Julius here. If I go back to Julius, you'll see the community forum, really great resource for you to join. Great place to ask questions or see some other folks' questions about Julius and some of the functionality there. Then we're also posting announcements frequently in both our community forum as well as our socials too, which are listed down here in the side panel. So you could join our Twitter and then also follow our YouTube and Luma too. Last thing, if you do have any really specific questions about things like billing, things like account access issues, feel free to reach out to us at team@julius.ai. We're monitoring that inbox 24/7. And the other cool thing that you could do, if you are having questions about things like our security, you can go to our security page to see a little overview of some of our compliance that we have, as well as some of our high-level policies. And if you want to go even deeper, you can go to our Trust Center, where you can see any of the actual policies and programs that we have in place, as well as our actual progress against things like SOC 2 Type 2, which we have, and also GDPR, which we are working on. Finally, you also have some resources here if you have questions about security that you want to share to your organization or to your university. You could share that here. And if you want access to our SOC 2 Type 2 report, you could request access this way. I know that's quite a lot. That is a general overview on just how to get started. We're really excited to help support you guys here. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We'll do maybe like 5 minutes Q&A afterwards if there were any outstanding questions. But as always, please leave us any feedback at the end of this in the Luma. So that way, if there's anything that we could cover in future sessions, we know what to cover. And then also, as always, reach out to us on team@julius.ai or post in the community forum too. I'm really here to help make sure you guys are having the most use out of Julius, right? And answering any questions that you guys have. Cool. I'm going to go to the Q&A over here. We'll maybe keep it open for a little bit, and then let's go ahead and see if you guys have any questions. We'll share this recording afterwards with Luma. We'll send out an email. We'll also send any other additional resources too. Any questions out there? For those of you who joined late, again, we are running our, let me see if I have it here, Twitter, X. Officially kicking off our birthday sweepstakes. Again, feel free to submit, if you guys do get using Julius, please do submit any visualizations. We love, and I mean it, we really do look at all of the posts that are tagged Julius because we really are interested in the work that folks are doing. So feel free to reach out and post that way. Any plans on integrating with Google Maps? I have a large data set of property addresses and property information. That's something, if you do want to add, you could add in to our data connectors here. And I would put in a request here. This has essentially a type form that you could use if there's a specific connector that you're looking for. So Google Maps, I think we've heard a couple of folks asking for both Google Maps and also for Apple Maps. So if you add it in here, the team is building out data connectors almost every single day. There's always a new one. Makes it kind of hard to track. So the other thing that you could do is use, if there is a Python library, I'm pretty sure there is one that can help with some of those things like geotagging and geofencing. That might be a Python library out there. If there is, any public Python libraries are all accessible within Julius too. So you could use that for any indexing or cataloging your property too. How do we protect uploaded data? That's a really great question, right? Again, you can visit our Security and Trust Center, but every single thing that you upload is encrypted, right? It's encrypted in transit and in rest, right? Our policies here about you maintain ownership and control of any things that you upload. That's assuming you already have the ownership and IP property rights to it. And we grant you the access and the IP property rights to anything that is created in Julius to you, right? So you keep all of that. Your files are separate from everyone else's, and nobody on the team, including the Julius team, can look at it. Caveat here, and you'll see this in some of our policies, is we are required to keep some files and some data just for compliance reasons for local authorities. But beyond that, the team doesn't look at your data, right? But if you are curious about more, feel free to check out our Trust and Support Center and then look for, just request our SOC 2 Type 2 access, which outlines a lot of our policies for maintaining or even accessing user files and how they're actually stored, including our infrastructure map. Christopher has a question. I want to use Julius for my grad school statistics course. How do you upload PNG files of distribution images to Ask Julius to determine answers and get it assistance on explaining how it's solved? Let's just do a really quick example here. Let me open up my browser real quick. Julius can analyze PNGs. Sorry, let me find my window. Julius can analyze PNGs, right? So if I go back to my thread and say, for example, I actually did this earlier last week. Say, for example, I only had this, right? So let me just actually copy this. And we'll go to a new thread. And you could even just paste it. I do this sometimes, again, side note, I do this sometimes when Julius has issues visualizing things and it's not really seeing what it needs to see. Again, Julius is just writing code in Python and then it's executing it. It doesn't really see the outputs similar to how we are looking at our screens. But one workaround is to just paste the PNG. So I'm going to do this here and I'll say, take a look at this visualization and give me any insights you can gather. That being said, Julius isn't built primarily off of running on PNGs. It can do it, but it's not the strongest compared to using things like structured data inside of like Excel files or CSV or JSONs, for example. So it can take a look, and you'll see what Julius is doing is it's actually, you know, pretty accurately looking at the different labels and stuff too, right? So it really just depends on first the actual visualization that you're uploading and the amount of context that is within the PNG. I would say the most successful way that you could do that is use the PNG and then also give it any contextual information, right? Give it any CSVs that help, you know, power that PNG if you do have it, if it is a distribution, or if you have, for example, an underlying data source, that would definitely help a lot more than just the PNG. We'll get away with some surface level insights, but again, it's not really able to see as much there. And you see it's able to somewhat visualize it, but it's not really going to be Julius's strong suit, but it can do it, you know. So just give it a try and let us know if that sort of works. But again, it'll help a lot just giving it some more contextual information in addition to whatever visuals that you're giving it. And then maybe we'll do one more question. Archie says, hi, is using notebooks better than threads when performing end-to-end data analysis? And is there an easy way to set up a structured data analysis step-by-step plan to perform it multiple times? Yeah, there is, right? So yeah, I would say 100% use notebooks over threads when doing end-to-end analysis. And the reason for that, and again, you could check out our videos from last week's webinar where we go about this in a use case, and we'll also cover this next week. But the really cool thing is you could add in as many cells as you want. And in fact, what I like to do is even break things down using what we call text boxes here. And you could break down specific sections of text and maybe say, for example, here's where I'll do like the data uploading. And then here's where I'll do maybe the EDA or exploratory data analysis. And then I'll do maybe down here, I'll do the actual analysis itself. Maybe I was doing some financial analysis. You could build out all the different prompts in order to finally hit each one of these checkpoints. Maybe we'll do one last one, so I'll do something here. And then maybe this last one will be like generating a report, right? If you're going to share it with your executive team and summarize findings. And the cool thing is, say for example, I had done all this analysis. I could simply go back to notebooks, expand it, and then create a new run of it. And it's going to do all the same thing over again, right? So again, you could maybe that first pass on it, make that first analysis, do the different steps in order to get to your end goal. A lot of cool ways and tips that, again, we'll check. I would recommend checking out the webinar from last week, and we'll cover this in next week's webinar. But there's a lot of things that we've added into notebooks specifically to help with getting more concise and consistent results that we could talk about. But you could always just rerun notebooks over time once you do have it maybe 95% of the way there. You can always fine tune these things, but doing the initial analysis and doing, you know, repetitive analysis afterwards, 100% would recommend using notebooks for that. And then finally, Christopher's saying, would uploading the PDF course book help it compute easier? It depends, right? It depends how big the course book is. Again, I would say Julius's ability to read PDF or extract information from PDF is, again, not the strong suit of Julius. If there is an actual data set, whether it's a CD file that some of these course books provide or an online resource maybe they have that helps power some of these data sets, it's going to work 100 times better than just being able to provide any PDFs too. It can do it. But again, the results aren't going to be as consistent or as thorough as you might want using Julius. There might be some more roadblocks or some workarounds you'll have to do. Cool. With that being said, if you guys do have any other questions, feel free to reach out on team@julius.ai or check out the resources that I've shared. And then, yeah, please provide us your feedback, and then we'll join you next week on where we talk a little bit more about notebooks. We'll do a different use case there. And then as always, feel free to reach out and look at the recordings of previous webinars as well. Thank you for joining us. Hope you have a great rest of your week, your great rest of your day, night, wherever you're dialing in from. And we'll see you in the next one. Take care, everyone. We'll see you guys later.